Welcome to Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. I'm Richard Miller, one of the hosts, and my co-host, he stole Bielsa's bucket and took a dump in it, Dr. Luke Gledall. How are you doing today, Luke?
Good. Oh, wow. We're Rich and I are really developing a bit of a hive mind because actually one of the kind of proposed titles I wanted to give to this was making Bielsa shit in his bucket.
Perfect. Yes.
Also giving Bielsa piles as well. I think that's also something else. But I'm very good. How are you, Rich?
I'm good, yeah. Bielsa very much the kind of Erd Woolley of football management.
Very much, yes, exactly. I was going to say that as well. As bizarrely as a man growing up in my mum's family is from Cumbria, which I don't know if that really kind of excuses why I grew up on a real tango of all Woolley and the Bruins.
The Bruins.
The Bruins. Don't really know why, but yes, I thought a lot about All Woolley, seeing Bielsa kind of
squatting on his bucket.
Squatting on it like some kind of rare mutant owl or something. I don't know. Very strange. Very strange.
Oh, dear. That's an odd trait, but there you go. Everyone's got to have a gimmick now. That's how you make it in management. You've got. I
was thinking, what other gimmicks are there out there?
Well, Villas-Boas likes a good kneel, and I think he's kind of borrowed that from Pep, hasn't he? They both like a kind of squat, sideline squat. I don't know how that helps. You know, managers sometimes sit in the stand to get a better view of a more tactical view. So being closer to the ground, I don't know how that improves your situation, but each to their own. Wenger had his sort of caterpillar-like jacket and the lack of, the inability to put his hands in his pockets. Monk has his coy look, which
he does indeed,
puts everybody off their dinner.
It's a real masterminding operation, isn't it? These football managers going up against each other.
It's just like wrestling. You got to have a thing. You got to have a gimmick. Mm-hmm. So something for people to relate to. So we should motor along slightly, shouldn't we? To our first. I say first regular feature from time to time. It's really our only regular feature, but doesn't change the fact it's a treat for all the senses.
Breaking hoo-hoos.
So it's been a bit of a busy week, at least not in terms of actual real news, things actually happening, but in terms of rumours and myths of rumours. There's been a bit of news.
Little faint smell of something coming, perhaps.
We've all been looking at chimneys, hoping for the smoke to turn white on some of these bits and bobs. So Odebajo appears to be. We've talked about how sort of the last 3 or 4 games we've kind of gone out of our way to not play him to the point of changing 3 out of the 4 defensive positions during a match. So it felt like he was sidelined significantly, and I don't know how officially it's sort of been commented on now, but basically the sort of the story that's come out this week is that Odebajo has been told to go find another club. He's not wanted anymore. So what are your feelings on that, Luke? I mean,
I think it's harsh. I've tried to kind of keep a degree of faith in Moses Odebajo throughout some very kind of tricky and trying kind of times. He's got a bit of a highlight reel of defensive faux pas at this point.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think we kind of understand against a player we've seen previously, a player we've seen up against us previously, his previous reputation. I mean, this was like a Steve Bruce signing, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
So, I kind of feel like there must be a player there. What is happening to completely cloud any real signs of his talent that's coming through? I don't really know.
He's another guy, a bit like Iorfa, because we signed Iorfa and he was a cheap transfer because he'd had a leg break, hadn't he? And he never quite sort of got back into the Wolves squad after that. I mean, Wolves had signed all those players for their sort of agent funded push for the Premier League. But that meant Iorfa, despite being fit and still clearly capable, wasn't getting a game. And I know Odebajo has come back from a big injury as well, but it feels like Iorfa has really recovered perfectly from his injury, and there's no hint of a guy that's carrying anything in Dominic Iorfa. But maybe with Odebajo, it has affected him, and particularly maybe it's affected his pace somewhat. I don't know, because if you become reliant on pace, like if Iorfa suddenly wasn't able to move as quickly as he is, he would be a much worse defender than he is, because a lot of the way that he defends is related to the fact he's got that recovery pace.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can slip on some of the basics if you can make up for the errors occasionally. Maybe that's something with Odebajo that's been the case. But certainly, I can't imagine there'll be many people kind of crying tears if he does move on. Because the 2 games in particular stand out. I think it's a little bit harsh, the Derby game, because most independent observers, and certainly to most Wednesday eyes, that was not a penalty that he gave away, but it was him who gave it away, and then it was his fault that he got sent off. He's caught out of position, he acted really rashly, and he was on a yellow card when he did that. So you're compounding one slight error maybe in terms of the penalty with one glaring error in terms of the sending off, and then obviously the game before that really stood out was Preston away, where aside from the penalties that Odebajo gave to them, it was a very, very even game of football.
Unless we forget, was it Ipswich as well?
Oh, was it Ipswich as well?
Ipswich near the beginning. That was a penalty which.
Oh yes.
What happened from that was Westwood took the brunt of it basically and was sent off.
Yes.
So that kind of brought in the brief spell of Cameron Dawson before Westwood coming back into the frame. And so difficult one. That was. There didn't seem to be a good kind of working relationship between Westwood and Odebajo.
No, we saw lots of kind of near misses in terms of, because obviously the Reading first game of the season was a bit of a Odebajo expecting Westwood to come out and Westwood expecting Odebajo to deal with it, and that was the one where Westwood got sent off for that one as well, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
I'm blanking on the Ipswich one, to be honest. Not that I don't believe you, because it was the other penalty. I thought that Palmer was on the pitch. The other penalty that we gave away, the West Brom penalty, that was Palmer, wasn't it? But it was.
Sorry, it wasn't. It wasn't Ipswich, because Ipswich aren't a team we played.
No, exactly.
Because they're not actually in the league. Thank you, Rich. Was it Reading?
Reading was the first game of the season where Westwood got sent off.
It was that. I'm pretty sure it was that game.
For making.
Apologies to yourself. Apologies to the listeners.
It's okay. It's just I know
it's been a real block as well. I think they're both playing blue. They're both pretty middling Treadwater Championship sides.
Yes.
They both kind of uninspire me in different ways. They're both in parts of the world that I don't particularly want to go to. Unless I'm seeing our good friend, or previously, who used to live there, Tim,
yes.
In Reading. But outside of Tim, I don't really have any great reasons to visit Reading, I'll be honest. I'm not wanting any hobnobs, I believe. I believe it's a big biscuit town. I'm not looking for a bedroom community outside of London.
No.
None of these things interest me. None of these things are things that I want.
No, that's fair enough.
So yeah, it's about as good to me as Ipswich is to me, which is not so good.
Yeah, but so not either way. I mean, whether it was Ipswich or Reading, perhaps we'll never know. But either way. He's certainly not covered himself in glory in many games that he's played for Wednesday, and it's been a pretty short run for him. So, so there we go. The question then is whether anybody takes him. Will anybody give him in wages what we've been paying him, etc., etc. The other side of things, still in terms of outgoings, there's a bit of a noise that Norwich might be interested in Jordan Rhodes again. They've sold one of their strikers, so and I believe Pookie is injured at the moment as well, so they're sort of in the market for somebody. And I don't know whether it's people just putting two and two together, because obviously they had him on loan last season. They showed interest in the summer. But then in this kind of, we're all, to demonstrate the fact that we're all having a kind of bun fight over the same two or three characters, we've also been linked with the Arsenal striker Nketiah, who's been on loan at Leeds for the first half of the season. And then I did see a story linking Norwich to Nketiah now. So that would be a tremendous irony that not only do we keep Jordan Rhodes, but we also don't get it's almost as a direct result of the fact that we don't get the other striker that we're potentially interested in. And then finally, we have seriously been linked with. We touched on it last week with one of my controversial picks for team of the decade. But we've been linked again with Connor Wickham.
All I want to say to that is, Rich, wigwam bam, are we going to get our man?
I think we'll sign the lot. I think we're going to get all those players. What's Keith Tracy up to? We'll get Keith Tracy. We're going to get Ben 10 back. It's all, and Medine, he's been released on a free. It's all going to happen. It's going to be, we're going to roll back the years. Ryan Lowe is going to be fox in the box coming off the bench. The good times are back, Luke, and I just hope you can get on board with it. Okay,
I'm looking forward to this Expendables-like Wednesday side of these second, third tier, once giants coming back in their twilight years.
Yeah, these are the good days. I mean, Expendables definitely. I think the age really leans into the Expendables comparison. We've also got the potential of Fast and the Furious. Nobody, even bad guys, can come back and be part of the family. Because I heard somebody mention Billy Sharp the other day. I mean, it can all comers. You can be a mass murderer 1 minute. You can be a member of the crew in the next film. Jason Statham.
Oh dear.
To just sort of slightly serious.
Then also, have we also potentially heard any kind of rumblings about Winnall kind of being linked away? I think I heard something. I don't know how good a source it was, but looking at him possibly going to Barnsley. I think was there previously some rumblings of Sunderland being interested? Though okay. I think I've heard Sunderland are apparently close to signing Gary Medine. So maybe that's not a thing now, but I also kind of want to add, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe in this kind of perspective of looking at Zhao, maybe the one who gets the most attention is going to be the one who's going. So in this situation, I could maybe see Winnall leaving above Rhodes leaving.
Maybe, yeah. It does feel like, particularly this January transfer window, it feels like a kind of a rural school, in that there's maybe one or two girls and everyone is vying for their favour, and it doesn't really matter how the particular gifts of the young lady in question, whether she's a great beauty or just a pudding. She's the only girl, and therefore everyone is interested in her. And it's a bit like that, isn't it, with these strikers? They're a pretty rom lot that are available by and large. Outside of the silly ones, I don't think Dwight Gale is a realistic possibility.
No,
particularly that he's played some Premiership minutes for Newcastle relatively recently. The other one I heard, just to go through, exhaustively go through all of them, Andre Gray just seems ridiculous. I mean, that guy, I know he's not pulled up any trees at Watford, but he's a pretty spectacular player. Not a great person, but when he was last in the Championship, he was fantastic. I just can't believe he's fallen far enough down the pecking order that he would be on our radar in our situation. So if Wickham is the most realistic option, how do we feel about that? He's still only 26, amazingly. He seems to have been around for absolutely ages.
I don't know. I mean, we're often, and this is the mentality of Wednesday, we're often, due to FFP and limitations and our own kind of lack of foresight and planning, we're often doing very kind of short-termism options before then a player's out of contract or something else changes or what situation we're in. So I don't know. I almost feel kind of resigned to say it could be okay. I'm very concerned with Wickham's injury record.
Supposedly he's been fit for 18 months, just not in favour.
Which is staggering, because then I'm like, I don't really know. This is Palace, right?
Yeah.
What kind of, who is taking that kind of striking berth from him at Palace? Because Palace aren't a particularly highly goal-scoring side, I want to say. I mean, they've got players like, I want to say on the wings, they've got Sahar, who's pretty fantastic. Is Benteke still there right now?
Benteke's still there, but he's
still there.
Perma
out of kind of form. So I'm just surprised who's really taking that mantle from him. You know, for that situation, if you said he's been fit for 18 months and he's just out of favour, Adthe Nuhiu, I guess.
He's also there. And then they've just signed Czech Tosun from, I think, Leicester City. So, yeah, it's hard to know what sort of fettle he will be in, because nobody's seen him play very much football. Sorry, Tosun is on loan from Everton, not Leicester City. It's a real mystery, but then so are these young players that come through, and certainly Connor Wickham has got more history to point to go, well, we know he's a decent player. If he gets on the pitch, he's more than good enough to play up top for us. And I would say, unless he's dropped off to incredible lengths, he's probably a darn sight better than Sammy Winnall and Jordan Rhodes are at this point in time. But I don't know. You don't know. He may well have dropped off to that extent. We won't know until we actually see him on the pitch. But he does have a Premier League goal to his name this season, so he's still got his shooting boots to some degree.
And I'm also wondering, and then this is the giant problem, is how many. I think it's really a viewing when you look at it. We've mentioned actually went on the website. We've mentioned all of their strikers. So Palace are a side who have 5 strikers. So I don't know. It seems very difficult, and especially it seems very difficult when there are these teams in the Premier League who are kind of ones to kind of scrap up and try and see if they can get mid-table. You know, it seems it's an annual challenge. And, you know, maybe one day we kind of bat our eyelashes and want to be a team like that ourselves. And that's unfortunately the nature of kind of football and money that kind of determines things and how this kind of goes. But I'm just curious why they would be in a situation for him to be on the sidelines in the first place, with a list of strikers, why he's not getting on a bit more, why he's not having more of an impact there, you know, his injury record. And wouldn't they surely kind of want to keep him there?
Well, I think Roy Hodgson's a pretty particular manager, and I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's a damning thing that he's not getting on the pitch for Crystal Palace, because sometimes Palace will play with none of those strikers because Hodgson is so deeply pragmatic in the way he puts his teams together. I think it's very much a kind of Stuart Gray, everyone is a defender, and if they're lucky they might get to go into the other team's half, you know, and maybe that just doesn't suit Wickham. He's not that. He seems to go with Ayew more often than not, but I think Benteke gets thrown on as their second option to change things up. So Wickham is not a powerhouse like Benteke is, and he's also not as sort of hard-working and tricky as Ayew is. Although I was blown away by how good Wickham was when he was with us for his longer loan spell. He seemed to work pretty hard and be very skillful, but I don't know where he's up to now, and you just don't know what the relationship is with Palace. So apparently in May this year, he signed a 1-year extension. He's probably in that position where, oddly, he's an asset, so they keep him on the cards. Like the other player that's the most obvious example of that is Ozil at Arsenal. Mm-hmm. Like, clearly, like, accountancy-wise, they have to keep him on the books because letting him go is writing off a huge figurative transfer value. But then nobody would nobody would want to buy him and pay him what he's on at Arsenal. So you kind of have to keep extending his contract. It's so weird. Like the way that we've decided to account for players in books terms has really led some players to lead a very charmed life. And Ozil is prime amongst them, but maybe Connor Wickham is another beneficiary, because it's like, well, we paid 7 million, 8 million for him, so there's a value there. But he barely plays the game. Yeah.
An interesting comments from Hodgson about the future of Wickham. Basically saying he's a regular game of football. If a situation arises where he's knocking our door down to go on loan, I wouldn't stand in his way. Right. I'm relaxed about the situation.
Right.
So maybe it is Wickham who comes back. I don't know. I'm not entirely.
You're not clapping your hands and jumping up and down.
No, I'm not that excited. I'll be honest. I really hope that I'm proved wrong and that he can kind of roll back the years to how he looked in those previous loan spells. But I'm not too optimistic.
It's a long time ago, isn't it?
It really is.
So the striker talk has taken on a different tenor because we know now that we're going to be without Fletcher for a good chunk of the rest of the season, if not all of the rest of the season. He's we're told 10 weeks away from being fit again. I'd imagine there's probably some time for getting up to speed on top of that as well, which is devastating news. I think it means we do need to sign another striker.
I think we definitely need two in this situation, because I can really see...
We needed one anyway.
I think that was basically the kind of situation I think Nixon was saying the same, was we were in the market for a striker anyway, but then Fletcher. I think in an ideal world, Fletcher would have still be fit. We managed to kind of source out Rhodes and Winnall, possibly, and then we get someone else in as well.
Yeah.
And then in that situation, I mean, we've only kind of got 3 strikers, but I don't know, the fitness and performing of Fletcher is the thing that's kind of really afforded this the strike partnership for us, this 4-4-2. Outside of that, it isn't working with any of the options.
No.
So then we're going towards this more kind of 4-5-1, moving to 4-3-3 situation, where it looks like we have more of the players for that from midfield, or more kind of consistent performers than some of the strikers.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is really a bit of Freddie foreshadowing looking towards this game as well, because that was very much the mentality, and we can talk about that later. But in terms of strikers, we definitely need 2 at this point.
Yeah. So just for reference's sake, if we take 10 weeks from today, that puts us on the 21st of March, which at that point we play West Brom, and then we'd have 6 games left in the season. So it shows just how big of a chunk Fletcher is going to be away for. There's possibilities it might be sooner, or he might be fit in time for that game, but you've got to think as an older guy, he's had knee problems previously. It's more likely to take longer than that 10 weeks than it is to be less than that 10 weeks. And as you say, we absolutely must add a striker in this window, and ideally it would be nice to add 2. But we sort of wanted one anyway. We need one now. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, you've done some foreshadowing. We should probably get to the football match, should we?
I think we should. Let's do it.
Amazingly, a 3:00 kickoff. This fixture cannot have been played very often, 3:00 on a Saturday.
It's usually confined to like an annoying midday kickoff, isn't it? Because, I don't know, the police get a little bit antsy. That they're,
yeah. Or there's the interest from Sky. I mean, Leeds are on Sky every other week, so it's odd for them to take the opportunity to watch some other team this week.
Yeah, I was surprised that this game wasn't picked either for Sky or for the international kind of coverage.
Yeah, there's a South Wales derby, isn't there? So that's one of the slots taken for this weekend. But other than that, yeah, interesting. So in terms of the way we started the match, we made a couple of changes. So I was really pleased to see. I've gone back and forth all week, as maybe the staff at Hillsborough have as well, in terms of OU. Urugide, is that what we're going with?
Urugide.
Is there a received pronunciation now for his name?
Urugide? Urugidi, I think, yeah, that's it. Ozaze Urugidi.
Yeah. OU. We can stick with OU.
Oh, yeah.
OU.
But I also like saying he's Urugidi and we want more. In a callback to former Wednesday assistant manager Chris Evans.
Lovely.
I thought you'd appreciate that one, Rich.
A pun very much bludgeoned into position there. I love it. But he kept his place. I think in terms of the back and forth, obviously he did very well against Brighton. We've had the week where we've told one of his potential replacements that he's not welcome at the club. So it felt like it was pointing towards him keeping his slot in the first team. But obviously it being a big derby game, there's pressures that come with that away from home. But it was nice to see him take his place and as far as I'm aware, stepped up again. We'll sort of cover that in more detail. But the change we made, we moved Bannon into the midfield. Mm-hmm. I saw one of the reports say we made 2 changes.
Well, because hang on, we did.
Oh, Fletcher started. Okay, yeah. So we
did Fletcher. He did Fletcher.
Fletcher started the Brighton game. Yeah. So that's what. So those were the 2 changes. Winnall, who replaced Fletcher in the Brighton game, kept that slot in the team. So it was Winnall up front on his own. The midfield was Murphy, Luongo, Lee, Bannon, and Reach. And then the back 5 of Dawson, Urugide, Iorfa, Burner, and Fox, Captain Fox Morgan. So this is interestingly, this is the first time Harris hasn't started a league game since he signed. So that was an intriguing nugget, and then the fact he didn't get on the pitch at all was similarly interesting. I think the moment where we probably would have thought of bringing him on was when Urugide was starting to struggle with cramp and was replaced. That's what the last sub ended up being.
Well, I was wondering for that position about whether, again, jumping ahead, whether when Luongo went off, whether that might have been a time to bring on Harris. So in my mind, what I would have done, I wasn't very keen on that substitution at the time, but I would have basically popped Reach across to play in the hole, and in that space of Reach, play Harris, sort of Harris and Murphy on the wings. So I was really surprised. I mean, first of all, I was surprised that actually looking at the midfield 3, there wasn't really a holding midfielder in there. Who scored have bizarrely also gone for Kieran Lee in the holding midfielder role, which again is this common misconception that's made by kind of websites, which is very strange. But I thought it was interesting we didn't really have... I also wouldn't have been surprised if we just kept the same lineup as Bar Fletcher from the Brighton game. But then you're in a situation, are you going to actually not play Bannon? And we really ever can't afford to not
I know,
do that.
That would have been a very big call, wouldn't it?
Yes, exactly. And Pelopessi was good, but he wasn't... he's never particularly been a world beater for any sense of appearances for Wednesday.
So just in terms of their average positions, the back 4 were pretty flat, although Urugide sort of was the furthest forward amongst them. I guess that's because of the space that Murphy was leaving there that he had to sort of fill. The deepest of the midfield trio was Bannon.
So I think what they were saying on commentary is that, they expected kind of Bannon to kind of drop deep and be that kind of, from my perspective, kind of like a quarterback centre mid. The thing I kind of have with myself with that situation is how often is that Bannon being told to do that, and how often is Bannon just naturally thinking he does that? Yeah,
I tend to feel it's because he's looking for space, but I don't know. It would be interesting to see who scored has got player positions just in average positions on the pitch. It would be interesting to see whether that's different in and out of possession, because you wouldn't really trust Bannon as your last line of defence particularly. So I would have hoped that Kieran Lee or Luongo would be further back when we didn't have the ball, and maybe Bannon doing some pressing, but I don't know. So just to hold my hands up here, I didn't have a stream until about the 70th minute. So everything up to that point, is on you. So
just to kind of go back and look at conclude the analysis of the lineup, because I really like doing that stuff, as we all know. So no Lees. Apparently, Lees was ill, so he wasn't even on the bench. I mean, I'm really happy with Iorfa and Burner for the centre-back pairing.
Yeah.
I'm really happy with that. Like I said, despite the fact that we're still kind of wondering who's, I was kind of expecting maybe like a holding defensive midfield player in this game. I must say I do really like that middle three, even if it is fluid and players are picking up and kind of rotating. Maybe Luongo's the one pressing forward and Bannon holds back, or then maybe Lee's the one who presses forward and Luongo holds back. There's a lot of different combinations, and if you can just kind of bring in the mentality of movement and being fluid with those players, it's going to be a good time. That's what I'm going to kind of say with that one.
Yeah, there's a lot to that trio.
I did think it was interesting that Harris was dropped. I do think that he probably needs a little bit of a rest. He just looks a little bit leggy at times, even for all his pace and industry that he kind of gives to a game.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it just seemed like some of his kind of stores for some of kind of getting forward and being creative just a little bit sapped as a result.
Yeah, it felt, certainly the last couple of games in that Christmas period, it felt like he was kind of going back. He was really having to dig deep to keep things going. So I think it's nice that we're in a position that we've been able to give him a bit of a rest. But I've got no doubt that he'll return and continue to offer us an awful lot of joy down the left or the right hand side. But yeah, I think Reach seems to be enjoying being a left winger as well, as shown by both goals today. There is a benefit to having a winger play on the right side. Inside-out wingers have become the kind of favourite thing because, well, one, fullbacks are much more attacking than they've ever been before. So having a winger that can cut in and then make space for the fullback to charge into is a nice thing. And then obviously wingers cutting in get themselves in goal-scoring opportunities. But we have two, when we play Reach and Harris as inside-out wingers, neither of them particularly play that position inside-out. Harris nearly always goes with his left foot for a cross, so it's quite rare that he cuts in. Maybe one or two times a game he will actually cut in and use his right foot. So there's no huge benefit from him being a right footer on the left. And then same with Reach. I mean, he more often than not crosses with his right foot from a deep position, much more so than he does sort of playing a ball from deep or cutting in on his left, although he can be devastating when he does that. So both the goals were much more easily facilitated because those wingers were in the right place for the foot that they tend to play the best football with. So yeah, everything's got its time and its place, but it's nice to see two traditional wingers on the right wing for their foot.
And then just at the top of this kind of post-Christmas Christmas tree, hopefully it's not been. Hopefully it's a top of that Christmas tree that was prior to Christmas, and not the one that was post-Christmas.
Yes.
But anyway, the star at the top of this tree, hopefully, is Sam Winnall. And again, I'm always interested to see how he performs in that kind of lone striker role, if he's supported. What does he kind of bring to the table in that kind of formation? I do have a little bit of trepidation. I don't think it's something that's particularly well suited to him. I think he's a striker who probably needs a partner in a 4-4-2.
Yes, yeah.
Or however else you kind of cut it and shake it. But anyway, just someone who basically needs someone else to join him up front. So it was just very interesting to look at the formation again. I was happy with the midfield. And yeah, kind of was interesting.
Yeah, I think probably summing up, none of those strikers are good on their own, particularly.
No,
and that's kind of the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
For different reasons, they are. Rhodes really needs somebody to do a huge body of work to allow him to essentially just stay between the goalposts and pick up chances. Adthe Nuhiu needs somebody with some pace because he's too slow to lead the line on his own. And then Winnall, I think, is he's probably the most mobile out of the three, which I think is why he would be my preference. Whilst we're in this situation, having a midfield stocked with really good players and win all up front would probably be my choice by and large, unless we can figure out a way to play to Adthe Nuhiu's strengths more consistently. Because win all effectively then just becomes another one of those quite hard-working, reasonably skillful players. He doesn't have to do it all himself, but as long as he plays his part, it might let somebody like Luongo or Kieran Lee or Adam Reach push on and take a chance. But then I don't know if that's really worked. It was quite effective against Brighton, but today he didn't. He was really feeding off scraps today, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. And that's where I think a lack of physicality. He's not going to fight his way into a game, barging people off the ball and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So getting into the game, I felt that really it was a very kind of frantic and frenzied start from the off. It seemed very clear that, and I know that this is really a game that really plays to our strengths. And I think Mum's strengths of setting the team up, of setting up a team that's there to kind of soak up the pressure and kind of play on the counter. I guess the interesting thing was looking at it from that first half was we were working so hard defensively to try and keep the shape and to try not to let basically Leeds kind of cause some damage. It looked like, I don't know if formality was going to be a strong word, but it looked very much at one point that Leeds would probably score, and a real kind of potential of the game is keeping a clean sheet against this Leeds side would be a real achievement.
Okay.
So it was interesting at the beginning. They were employing a very high press and kind of getting up to us and not kind of giving us much time on the ball. The problem then was kind of the fact that, and as we've seen, Dawson's kicking was just atrocious.
Right.
It's really, really poor for this kind of for vast majority of the game, but especially in the first half. Actually, we're very early on. I think basically Bannon kind of picked up the ball. It was literally the first minute of the game, played it back to Dawson, and under pressure he just shanked it out basically.
Did it look windy? Because I did notice there was quite a few sort of missed headers on both sides. Like as I say, I only got sort of 20 minutes, but it did make me wonder whether.
Probably so, and maybe the thing that probably gave that away from the kind of visuals was a series of Chris Packett's American Beautying their way across the pitch. So it probably was a very windy, January day in Leeds for this one. So yeah, the situations probably weren't ideal. I mean, also I'd like to add as well, just to add a little bit of insult to injury, a little bit of salt on the roast potatoes. It's the thing I like doing. I like putting salt on roast potatoes. And but in a negative way, there was a goal kick in the 7th minute where Dawson kind of ran up to it and slipped over taking it. And that just kind of summed up a lot of his kicking, really.
Oh.
And so it was interesting. Like, we were setting up for the counter-attack, but we weren't really getting it forward. We had difficulty holding on to possession. No one's really there to kind of win it in the middle of the park, which there's a lot of mistimed headers, like you mentioned. So probably the conditions aren't very good for that. But also, I think in terms of personnel, it wasn't particularly good for that. I don't particularly think the balls were really getting that far up to Winall, and Winall's not the best out of our strikers in terms of kind of bringing the ball down and winning that. He's not someone who's a target man.
He's probably the worst.
I would think so. Think so.
Yeah.
And then kind of looking over the highlights from the first half, in the 17th minute, Leeds made a huge miss. It was a really great free kick, actually.
Okay.
Which they kind of swung into, and I think it was Harrison who kind of got on the end of it.
Right.
And he met it very well, but just put it completely wide, and it looked like a goal. It looked like it basically a formality to a goal all day long. And that probably kind of sums up a lot of Leeds as well. Their finishing was pretty poor from those kind of situations. We had we were still giving away kind of a few poor free kicks in the first half. We couldn't really keep hold of the ball.
Yes, yeah.
They had a disallowed goal, which was just...
offside, wasn't it?
It was offside, and the ball kind of came down to... the thing I was kind of saying about the first half is Eurohidi was doing very, very well, despite the fact that they really concentrate a lot down that left flank.
Okay.
I mean, the fact they've got Jonathan Douglas, who's a very good attacking left back. Harrison he was really good in the first half. And basically for that disallowed goal, the ball kind of came up, looked like it was going out, and just with a real deft touch, Harrison brought it down on one touch, kind of brought it in, and then slipped it in. It was a good ball, but it was completely offside.
Okay.
And then the cross then for Bamford to head home was offside as well. But it kind of really summed up a lot of the threat that this Leeds team have. We've talked about teams that have impressed us. I've been really impressed with Leeds. They look like a team that can break and have the quality very, very quickly. And
there's some wonderful passing movements. Because the bit that I saw was basically, it may well have been the story of the match by and large, but it was just constant pressure and quite inventive passing moves, sort of looking like they were leaving a wing to sort of spread the play and then going back to that wing because that had opened up because we were sort of shuttling across. So yeah, they are top two for a reason.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
And I've never really seen the same level of quality from the games of West Brom.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of surprised why West Brom are as high as Leeds in that top two. I mean, they have a lot
I think it's quality of striker probably as much as anything.
That's probably something as well. But it was interesting because, Yorohide was just brilliant in terms of work rate and tenacity and determination that first half. And I said he did really well considering like he had like a lot they were concentrating so much about, and they were getting a little bit of change out of him in those situations, but it's tough. It was really tough for him in that situation. The other kind of note I just want to make is basically Dawson was making some really good saves. We looked back at, there was a good chance where it was a great slip through pass from Bannon to Reach swung one over, and it was really too quick for Murphy to really do anything, and you don't really want Murphy on the end of that, and that didn't end up very well, as you imagine.
Yes.
So first half, basically, I think the stats kind of painted a very big picture, which is basically like Leeds had 70% of the possession pretty much.
Yeah.
We had 30%, and then we had 6 shots with none on target. Burner rammed one over. There wasn't really much to kind of write home about, but already from that first half, it looked like we were doing very well considering with Leeds.
Okay, yeah.
Just kind of going forwards looking poor. I said at one point, actually, in my notes, just in that first half, was actually it really wasn't working for Winall, despite how hard he was trying.
Yeah.
And I would actually, if we had the personnel, I would actually go with a 4-6-0 in this one. Just because I think we have far more promise and pace and, attacking options.
You could add, it would be daring. It would be, you'd have to, if it didn't work, he'd have to really get his flak jacket on. But if you swapped Winall for Harris and then had it that kind of the spare man out of those three wingers was always pushing to the middle. As much as any other striker, that would be useful. Whether it ends up being Reach, Murphy, or Harris, none of those are going to be a welcome presence running at you. But it would just be getting in behind would be the key, wouldn't it? It's quality in behind, which hopefully we would have with Lee and Bannon and Luongo there. And Burner loves a pass. So I joined the game sort of. I didn't see Nuhiu come on, and I didn't see him get his yellow card, so it must have been that sort of 71st minute or so that I was able to watch from. And just seeing, like, as you sort of described, tons of possession for Leeds, several players dropping down injured, whether that was to kind of buy some time and some breathing space, but Burner went down injured. Kieran Lee went down injured, sort of holding his head and his shoulder. And then Urugide was getting some help from Alioski with his cramp, having no doubt hindered him and in some ways caused the cramp. He then helped him stretch it out. So then we made the change. So Adthe Nuhiu came on. Were you pleased with the change when it came?
Here's the interesting thing. So I kind of want to just backtrack a little bit to the beginning of the second half. That's fine. Also, just want to say I really, really, as much as I'm kind of admiring and kind of batting my eyelashes at this Leeds team, they're still Leeds. And I think that was summed up by the beginning of the second half. They came out and did one of those those really toss warm up things on the sideline, where they kind of jump over things, and I'm like, I just can't stand these people. I can't stand teams that do that. It's so wanky. It really is. It's just terrible. So they're doing that. I mean, this is just Leeds all over. I mean, really. But we came out with a lot more kind of intensity and pace in the second half. We looked to cause some issues. We were kind of, we were really pushing forward. And I guess this is an interesting thing, is how much is always, we've seen this a lot, especially from Wednesday. There's a talking at half time. There's some tweaks.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a bollocking, sometimes there isn't a bollocking. And we come out with a lot more kind of intensity and verve in that second half. But I also wondered how much of it was just really just in that first half to just get a measure of what Leeds were doing, kind of contain them, see what hand they're playing, and then kind of retire to the dressing room and then just make a few tweaks and go back out, or just change a few things that weren't working. Because we seem to drop off them a lot in the first half. In the second, we were actually getting up there and causing a few issues for them.
He does. I think he quite often likes to do that. Not right off the first half, but if we don't have a clear... Sometimes we clearly start the match with this is what we need to do. They're really bad at X, so make them do lots of X. But when we don't have that clear out the gates, then his second option seems to be that he likes to play it very safe first half, see how things go, maybe even for an hour play it very safe, and then make some quite aggressive changes to try and change things in our favour. Yeah, it's intriguing.
It is interesting. So, I mean, we had a few chances. There was a great chance at 49th minute where great work from Murphy, and then he kind of screwed it across, and Winnall was just a little bit away from it on the slide.
Oh, yeah, heard that, yeah.
That was kind of heartbreaking.
If he was 6 inches taller, I believe was the commentary.
I agree. That is a good comment. 51st minute, some more great work by Murphy. He fed Lee in, and Lee screwed it across. And that was just great to see, because it was just kind of like a real callback to, Kieran Lee having this real radar in his head.
Yeah.
It's funny, some of my work colleagues were talking about a young hockey player who basically what he used to do was to watch a game and he would draw where the players were for the positions of maximum opportunity.
Okay.
And to get in those positions, and just had like a real kind of radar in his head. And that player grew up to be Wayne Gretzky. So I thought a lot about that kind of mentality with just a general across sports.
Yeah.
Just thinking it is a real talent that Kieran Lee kind of possesses, and just seeing a little callback to that. That was really, really sweet to see.
Lovely.
53rd minute, we had some pinball around the box, and then it kind of fell out for Winnall, who volleyed it over. He just couldn't keep it down. I think that was probably the chance for Winnall, I'll be honest.
Okay. Yeah.
And then other things of notes, I kind of drifted off with some of the kind of play. Urahidi did a fantastic run at the 56th minute and then was hauled down, and we didn't get a penalty. Then 2 minutes later, he just does the same thing again. Just does this absolutely amazing run. And the note I've put down here, I'll try and convey this in an audio sense. His pace and determination is bananas. Bananas in capital letters. He was just fantastic. He was just full of running and industry, and and helping getting down that right flank, and then just basically just not knowing when he was beaten. And just really giving the Leeds players a real headache with that. You just felt they were a bit like, well, I've kind of tackled him, and then he just gets up and just keeps going and just wants to win the ball. And a couple of occasions where 2 or 3 Leeds players had to take him down. He was just an absolute monster in that regards. So really good showing from OU.
Do you think it should have been a penalty?
Which one would that?
The first one you sort of described in it, but we didn't get one. So do you think that one was a miss?
Oh, it was just a free kick. It was a free kick outside the box. Sorry,
right,
it didn't encroach into the penalty area. But I didn't understand why it was. And then there was this kind of weird relationship with Leeds were getting a fair few fouls because we're a team that gives away fouls.
Yes.
And then somehow when they got a free kick, I think after a spell, they gave like an ironic cheer. And it was very strange because it wasn't like, I didn't feel that they were being short shrifted by the referee.
No.
The referee was kind of okay. Maybe we could have got 1 or 2 more free kicks, I'll be honest. But it was fairly decent for that regards. I don't think anybody was being screwed out of anything.
No. Oh well, that's good to hear. So did those chances for Urugide came after they swapped Barry Douglas for Aliovski? Is that right?
That may have been the situation. What minute did he come on? Because I was aware
came on
of
the 56th minute.
Right. Yeah.
Which
so it was around that time, basically. Yeah.
Which I guess is their first attacking move, isn't it?
Yeah, and I found it was interesting the fact that despite the fact that Leeds had this possession and dominance, they were the one looking to keep changing things and try something else because it wasn't working in their perspective. And we just kind of held tight on that. I wondered whether, I mean, we couldn't come to, do you want to talk about like the timing of the substitutions? Because I think that kind of brings in a big different flavour to the game.
Yeah, so they made their second sub before we made any. So they took off Klitsch, who'd been playing in the midfield, and swapped him for Pablo Hernandez, who's probably a bit more of an attacking midfielder than Klitsch. So 2 quite attacking changes from Lee. He's changing a left back for a left winger who he can play left back, but he's mainly a left winger, Aliovski. And then Hernandez tends to be a pretty attacking presence as well. And then we made our change 69th minute. We subbed on Adthe Nuhiu for Sammy Winnall,
which I think is a substitution. I think is a starting for Nuhiu up top of zone. I think we'd like to think that Nuhiu could do that more often.
Yeah.
I really think that maybe what we saw from the sub appearance is what we think should happen more often with Nuhiu.
Yeah.
Just again, that level of kind of consistency from the enigmatic Kosovan striker that we have. The Kosovan Snooki, who has a little few surprises in her handbag potentially. And I think that's probably the kind of substitution that changed the game. I was a little bit at the time. I mean, I guess that was interesting. Maybe that was a real kind of Gary Monk masterclass. We didn't typically think for a lot of us that the substitutions were very good. I think that was kind of what was kind of going around from the little bit I saw on Twitter from a few mentions on the commentary.
And then in a sort of I've forgotten an M. Night Shyamalan style twist. All of those players that were brought on had a part to play in the thrilling finale.
Exactly, because then we brought on, so Urugide was having a fantastic game and he went down with cramp. I felt really bad when that happened because it was just, I was really worried it was like an injury and we just wouldn't see him for, God, I don't know, 1 or 2 months now, whatever, whoever joining the injury list.
He first there was a clip going around. Bullen was sharing a clip on Twitter of Fox getting all the way back from an attacking position and kind of tracking his Brighton winger opposition player all the way back into our box and making a block. And similarly, that same sort of desire. We had a free kick that we didn't do very much with. It was quite weird. It was that one where sort of Nuhiu seemed to go to chest it, even though it looked like a kind of free header for him. I don't know. But they broke very quickly from that, and Urugide was completely out of position. So he was pressing the ball on the left flank, chased all the way down the left flank, and then was making his way back across the box and was in a really good position to intercept and clear a very good cross that Leeds had put past Fox and Burner. But it was clearing that away was when he seemed to feel this twinge of the cramp, and he never quite got back to normal after that. But it was just another very good moment where it came to light. But he went down. The next sort of break in play is when he went down, and then the next chance we subbed him off. He was subbed after Luongo.
Yes, so 77th minute, Luongo went off for Pelopessi, which I didn't know. I wasn't keen on that substitution. But again, maybe looking at that...
What has little Joey got to do to convince you, Luke?
Well, I just felt from that perspective, I wondered whether we would maybe go... Because we hadn't really had any kind of great holding DMs up to this game. And that was something that I thought maybe that would kind of happen.
Yeah.
other than Bannon, but Bannon's not someone who's really going to break up play or tackle a great deal. He does okay, but he's not that type of player, is he?
No.
So, yeah, I was kind of wondering about all that stuff. And, yeah, in my mind, I think the substitution I would have made in that position would have been bringing on... I don't even know. I didn't think Luongo was particularly tiring. But maybe one of them, maybe Lee, the potential. Lee or Luongo, one of those two.
Yeah.
And I would have probably thought about bringing him off, bringing Harris on, bringing Reach into the middle, and then kind of having Harris and Murphy on the wings.
But then, yeah, as we say, Kieran Lee still being on the pitch, maybe we played that big part. Like in Signs, Jacqueline Phoenix, why do we care that he used to play baseball? Well, this is why we care.
I haven't seen it. I'm deeply upset by the spoiler, Rich. But I love you, and I'm gonna carry on. But then that was the thing.
Signs,
so I mean, I know, but if I haven't seen Signs, if you haven't seen Signs now, when will you ever see Signs? I think that's what people will say, and they'd be very much correct. But that was the thing. That was our last roll of the dice, was bringing that enforced changer, bringing Hutchinson on for Erhidi, and I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, generally at that point, for a lot of the mentality of the game was, I felt so much with this that, like, if it came to a 0-0, it would have stopped the rot from these three, these three league performances, and it would have been a point. Admittedly, we then look back and from a very aggressive mentality look and say we've got 1 out of 12 from the last 4 games. Yeah. But I mean, it would have been something at least. And I was really spirited by this performance. A lot of this industry and togetherness and fluidity of players came from that Brighton game and came to this. So maybe at that point, I was kind of maybe just like, I think that's probably it. I genuinely, I'm still watching with a vague sense of hope, but I genuinely felt at that point that we were settling for the clean sheet. We were settling.
There were substitutions not to lose what we had, weren't they? They weren't substitutions to roll the dice. They were. They were, the very least, it was base camp, like this is where the worst thing that happens today is we get a draw, is what those subs were designed to do. Yeah, definitely. And
so do you think just to go on this continually spoiling things, anybody who's never seen The Usual Suspects, do you think Adthe Nuhiu was our Kaiser Söze in this game?
He's spent the best part of 5 years limping and looking like a non-footballer, so that in this very moment he could trick Leeds into going to sleep. So we talked about
all the substitutions making a hand in this. Yes. Which actually, I want to ask you. So the clearance from Hutchinson actually kind of hit that long, and that kind of caused a little bit of, that didn't go directly into our possession. There was a little bit of kind of interchange there.
It was another missed header, wasn't it? He got his head on it, but it went straight up in the air, and then Kieran Lee got himself involved in where the ball dropped. I don't think it came off Lee. I think it came off the Leeds player, but it sort of spilled into the middle of the pitch. To Adthe, and he played an absolute peach of a ball through.
He was lovely. He just basically spent a lot of time with Bannon, so he just evoked, there was some osmosis of skills that kind of went to Nuhiu. We'd seen that time, we remember the goal against Preston, where basically Nuhiu had just prayed to a idol of Lionel Messi prior to the game, and then suddenly was begifted some kind of brief temporary powers to just take it past 3 players and bend it into the top corner. So it was such a lovely, sweet, weighted ball into Jacob Murphy. And then Jacob Murphy, from a position where I would not put any great, immense faith in Jacob Murphy to do anything particularly positive in this situation.
And often Murphy doubts himself in those situations. You quite often see him check or hold himself back in those positions, but not a modicum of it this time round.
No, and just absolutely just a lovely finish into the corner with his right foot.
Yeah, he beat the keeper at the near post, which I'm sure the keeper won't be happy about, but it was a really good finish.
It was really something else.
Hit it early, hit it hard.
Lovely. 1-0. And suddenly we've just come and just absolutely a real smash and grab.
Perfect. And then obviously we had the you knew it was coming, but the shock of 5 minutes of time added on in a half of football where not very much had happened. But so that you're looking at that thinking, oh, are we going to be clinging on? But probably the least effective part of the game for Leeds United, I think. They didn't get anything going, really.
Yeah, and suddenly this team who looked dangerous and attacking, and I think Leeds had a decent shape to them. We just that last goal at the in the fourth minute stoppage time.
Yeah.
It was just so good. Everything, it fell to Berner. Berner did a lovely, sweet little quick pass. Bannon with just the most sumptuous kind of blind, kind of, curved through ball.
Did he sort of do the old Ronaldinho trick of looking one way and playing it the other?
I don't know if it was quite that sumptuous, but it was pretty.
I thought he looked left and then flicked it over the defender's sort of left shoulder. Like he looked left and played it right. But I'd have to see it again. I haven't seen a replay.
It was just wonderful. It was just so sweet. Just cool as you like. And the thing that was first time from Bannon, and then it comes onto Reach. And in my head, I think looking back, before I kind of went back and actually replay this goal as well as the first goal.
Yeah.
Just before we started the podcast.
Yeah.
And first time from Reach as well.
Yeah.
And the positioning from Nuhiu was fantastic. You could see him, like the two defenders running in to be like, crap, what's going on? And then Nuhiu just holding back a little, just kind of peeled back a little.
Yeah.
And then he made it first time as well. And then just absolutely just sweeps it home past the keeper. And just the speed of which we played that ball just made the entire Leeds team look like complete amateurs.
Yeah.
They all seemed to just be on a heap on the floor. It was just seriously looked like it was men against boys.
One of them genuinely seemed to have his head in his hands before the ball even got to Nuhiu. I think because he knew he'd lost Nuhiu. I think he was already like, oh, like balls, what have I done kind of thing. But tremendous! That goal was unbelievable. And a 2-0 win. Cut to Gary Monk with the biggest cheeser on his face because this has to taste incredibly sweet for him.
Yeah.
No boy today. He had a big grinning like a Cheshire cat today. He was.
So in terms of the kind of layout of the pitch, I want to kind of get my head around this. So the Wednesday fans weren't behind the goal; they were behind the goal we were defending.
Right. Oh, that's odd.
So then we had this really weird kind of interchange and kind of editing where basically. So they scored the Wednesday the Wednesday players are going insane. We cut back to a shot of Dawson and Fox just kind of whipping up the crowd and loving it and celebrating. I'm like, they're thinking, hang on, Dawson's not got that far down the pitch, so it's a real kind of thinker, this. It's another twist in the M. Night Shyamalan film that this is. It's basically a compendium of M. Night Shyamalan twists in one film. With Adthe Nuhiu being Kevin Spacey. Just the full reveal of that spoiler. Excuse me.
And it was
I had that spoiler ruined for me by a show called I Love the 90s, where they went through. Oh, that film was great, wasn't it? Oh, and then you remember Kevin Spacey was Kaiser Söze at the end. I'm like, I haven't fucking seen the film. Anyway, it's one from the 90s, so it's probably like The Sixth Sense at this point, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Well, that is one that people love spoiling. Like, I've never seen The Sixth Sense because the spoiler was everywhere straight away, and people, I keep thinking, I'll leave it a few years. People will stop talking about The Sixth Sense, and I'll maybe forget and be able to watch with a bit of kind of room to be surprised by the twist. But it's constantly in the zeitgeist. So it must be one of the most culturally affecting films ever. That Bruce Willis is dead all along is ingrained in the memory of all of us, whether we've seen that film or not. Whether we've ever seen a film in our lives, we all know. Babies are born now and know Bruce Willis is dead all along.
Dead all along.
Some children, it's their first words. Dada, Dada, Bruce Willis is a ghost. Oh.
And we're all there, and the mum and dad are like, I can't believe they talked about the Sixth Sense on Paw Patrol this week.
SpongeBob's got a whole episode taking off the plot of it. Oh dear. So yeah,
but in terms of spoilers for another sense, we really spoiled Leeds' promotion party today.
We did.
Yeah, no, this was a real bloody nose and real blip on their radar of them being top dogs and contenders. And, interesting that they're a team that are so good, and yet we've basically taken 4 points off them.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's impressive. And I do want to say, what is it about Adthe Nuhiu? And he really loves those last-minute, gloss on the victory goals, because we've had, a couple of them now, haven't we?
Oh, that one in the snow that's one of his absolute highlight reel moments for Wednesday, isn't it? That
it really is. It really
just
is.
Nudging the Leeds defender into row 3 with his arse, and then sliding it into the far corner. Just whilst everybody is kind of ice skating on this snow that fell in the space of about 10 minutes. Brilliant. But today's was right up there, with it.
That's another spoiler, because that was like turning up that Bambi knew how to ice skate all along, wasn't it? Really?
If only the mum had. This is great. Just ticking off all the films we're spoiling for people is really fun.
Don't get me onto the crying game or the and not the crying game purely because the Leeds fans are crying and we're pissing all over their chips.
And it was Rosemary's Baby all along.
Oh dear.
And that's the prestige. Sorry. Oh dear, just making myself chuckle. So would you like to rate some players, Luke? I
would like to rate some players.
Like St. Peter, Dr. Luke likes to rate players. Big Cameron Dawson.
Malte Cammy. He made some decent saves, and I want to give him a 7, and I want to say that's purely for his saves. So I would have basically said, I think I would have in a different game given him an 8.
Yeah.
I loved his saves and he made and his command of the area. He had some really good moments where he claimed the ball from a corner. I think he did that twice.
Yeah.
It was just really cool and assured. He would have got an 8, but his kicking was dire. His kicking was so poor. So that's why he's down to a 7.
That's fair enough.
It's funny, we do these ratings and then you want to give someone a 7 and then they, don't do it. They're okay, but then they actually end up scoring. So it comes to 7.5. And but he gets a point deducted for his kicking, which was
fair enough.
Just bad. It was really bad. But anyway, outside of that, I don't know. An interesting thing to think about from a long-term perspective, I definitely would like a new contract for Cameron Dawson.
Doesn't he? Yeah.
I think he deserves one. But then the overall kind of burning question is I don't know, it's weird. So to kind of talk and think about hockey from this perspective.
Okay.
Not
where I thought we were going, but
not where we thought we were going, no. So the Calgary Flames right now have got this Czech keeper called David Rittich, who's basically been kind of primed to be number 1, but he's not quite there. Yeah. So then they've just kind of brought in basically a secondary kind of goal stop who's a more experienced guy called Cam Talbot, who's I think is probably benefiting from some of the kind of questionable form from Rittich. It doesn't really work I don't know if it works that much in football. It seems to be a real. It's a lot more of a state. There's less kind of turnover. I guess there's less games.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we can kind of afford to do that with Dawson. I don't know. I mean, hopefully we've had this conversation and we've also had, I believe, was it one of the listeners, Mark Etchers, who kind of sent us a message on Twitter basically saying, yeah, he's no spring chicken at this stage.
Yeah.
The times are kind of clicking on for Cameron Dawson. So I kind of think I would like I would like someone a bit better. Just the question is Dawson going to be, does he have any room to grow to become a little bit better in that aspect? Or, is it someone else that comes in? I definitely think we need someone who's going to push him for a first team slot. And I don't think, I don't know, is Westwood completely gone at this point? That's another question.
If he wasn't, but I find it hard to think that he's not completely gone.
I don't know if he's gone to his. Is he proper Irish or is he fake Irish, Kieran Westwood?
Heartily fake Irish, I think.
He's enjoyed a Guinness on a few occasions.
Yes, yeah.
He's Manchester. So he's a big Mac lad, isn't he? Yeah. So I don't know if he's going to go off into his kind of Guinness wilderness and kind of come back and be reborn again, or I don't know. So I also made another interesting note as well, which was like, I guess I was wondering about the times of Jos and when Jos was deciding to stick with completely kick out Westwood from the first team picture, which at that time was completely undeserved. And we decided to go with Dawson for the mentality of basically being like, a remit that we felt that Jos was probably given, or maybe not, maybe it wasn't. But basically he was trying to kind of blood some of these youngsters. So he played Dawson, and then Dawson would often like stroke it short.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we don't do that anymore. I'm kind of glad we don't do that, especially under Leeds. That would have been disastrous because they were playing a real high press. And a lot of teams like playing this high press, like we mentioned.
We like playing the high press against those teams that pass it around the back four.
We do as well.
Do particularly well.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I'm wondering how much of that was then also coming from the perspective like his kicking is dire.
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought about it from that. I think it was definitely he was told to do it because he never looked comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
So it was definitely the way Jos wanted to play. You're right. I think it felt harsh on Westwood where we've obviously seen that he had a little bit left in the tank. But it feels like with what we've seen this season, it wasn't far off being the right time for that decision. What didn't help Dawson was the team in front of him were an utter shambles. Now he's got a very good defence in front of him. And the better your defence is, the less you have to do as a goalkeeper. I remember when everybody was calling David De Gea the best goalkeeper in the world, somebody looked at the statistics and it's like he had to make on average 4 saves a match. Now most keepers have to make 8 to 10. So it's quite easy to look like the best ever when you're not having to do very much. And Dawson had the exact opposite of that, where he was the most active. I think he was making the most saves, or he'd made the most saves. Like there was some glowing statistics in that regard, but he'd still let in a lot of goals and didn't keep any clean sheets. But that just meant he was overworked. That was a bad team, and particularly a bad defence in front of him.
Well, and that's that's probably something for the people doing kind of as we do a draft fantasy league. Maybe if you're so relegated by you don't have any kind of top choice keepers to pick out for clean sheets, maybe pick one from a bad team because they're going to be under the cosh every game. They're going to make a ton of saves, and that's going to be a lot of points. So there's like a really weird kind of interesting mentality of looking at, goalkeepers from poor performing teams. They're probably tested a lot more often than your man, Davy De Gea, who's stealing our hearts for how good a goalkeeper is when he's not stealing donuts from a Tesco in Manchester.
Yes. Well, no, but now he's in a Man United team that are not very good. He's making clangers every other week. So, how good of a goalkeeper he was is a big question, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
I don't care whether he's good or not, but, it's a big question for them. But in terms of Dawson, I'm still of the opinion we could do better. Then it becomes, what can we do anything about? Because Westwood obviously will be taking a pretty significant wage. So in terms of managing a wage bill,
and now for another year and a half, basically.
Yeah. Bringing in another first team goalkeeper without moving Westwood on would be a pretty massive chunk of change, I would think, being dedicated just to goalkeeping. So it's whether I'm sort of feeling that Dawson is good enough to do the job, but then it's the scale of your ambitions and whether you can do something about Westwood.
Yeah.
Because if you're a team that wants to get promoted or win the league, probably need a bit better than Cameron Dawson. If you're a team that is happy to be in mid-table, I think Dawson's more than good enough. I think Dawson will be, he will play professional football into his mid-30s now. That's he's good enough to do it. The question of which level he ends up at is fairly up in the air, I would think. But his all-round goalkeeping seems to be improving, as you say. His control, his command of the area is better. He's going up for, he's braver going up for big claims in the box. And to an extent, Dawson is a bit like your hockey keeper analogy. Dawson is riding a wave of, in some ways, he starts every game with a 6.5 or a 7 because he's not throwing the ball at the foot of a striker in our box under very little pressure. He's not trying to climb over a crowd of players when he's too short to do it. He's not making a howling clanger that's giving a goal away every game, and therefore he's much, much better than his alternative in that position. But at some point he has to stand out on his own. But I do think he's maybe starting to do that to an extent, but maybe not quick enough for us this season. Anyway, 7. There we go. Mm-hmm. Every player is going to have 15 minutes on their on their rating. Next up, you.
Wow, this is he's a contender for man of the match, but I don't think he's going to quite get that mantle, which is heartbreaking. I've given him an 8. His drive and running was just incredible. The pace, the power and determination from him is something else. He had defensively he did some good work as well. This is, I don't know where this is going to go with him. He's still very young. Hearts. He really has. And, we all remember we talked about the game against Brighton for his debut.
Yeah.
And now he's made his senior league debut, and both have been great games. But today was even better, actually, than Brighton.
In terms of that. Good to hear.
And just we remember we talked about the interview of him afterwards where he was just beaming.
Yeah,
it was just it meant the world to him, and it makes me struggle to not start crying when I think about that. And I think it's bringing in just like a little bit of new blood, and it's someone who comes in who's just looks like his attitude is just incredible. And his approach to the game, and I hope he's just got the biggest smile tonight because he deserves it.
He really does deserve it. And that video, I think it just cut to the heart of everyone in a way. It captured that kind of football fraternity feeling that we've talked about in previous weeks. When players get injured and everybody stands to clap them off. And there's a bit of that sometimes with sort of minute silences and things like that as well. And this young guy just overwhelmed by his debut. Captured so many hearts, and I think over 4 million people had viewed that video last time I checked. So wonderful. That's so good to hear, and I'm almost welling up myself. We should move on swiftly to Dominic Iorfa.
I've gone for a 7 for Iorfa, and I say 7 with a kind of sigh and kind of heavy heart, because that's kind of damning for Iorfa because he's just particularly so good. I thought he was the worst of the two. It's probably Iorfa's worst game for a bit, but I say worst is because he just looked a bit shaky today.
I mean, if your worst game is keeping a clean sheet away at our biggest divisional rivals and also top of the table, you can tell the sort of season that Dominic Iorfa's
having. Exactly.
Bad day at the office today. Only kept the clean sheet against the dirty Leeds.
But he was still good. He was still Dominic Iorfa, and he had some important plays to make and important defensive bits. So that's good.
There was one moment later on where he absolutely smashed their winger and confidently let the ball roll out of play, even though it probably had about 20 yards left to go. I'll take your line on that and accept that he was maybe the weaker out of the two, although in light of a very good day all round. Julian Berner was his partner at the back,
and he gets a 7.5. He was the better of the two. He was a lot more commanding. He seemed to have a lot more of those moments of getting things by the scruff of the neck. I don't recall any great errors. I think he made like a mild one.
Okay.
I also made a bit of a mild error near the beginning bit, actually coming off from Morahide, and it was just he just thought, yeah, it's one of those things. Luckily, I think it just ended up in a chance where Bamford tamely hit one at Dawson.
Okay.
Because Bamford is terrible, and and a crap footballer and a bad striker, and I don't know why that Leeds keep sticking with him. But anyway, that's
he's the man.
A story for a different time.
He's probably racked up sort of 30-40 million in transfer fees during his career and never done anything anywhere.
Exactly. Anyway, back to everyone's favourite German, Julian Berner. He's just looking like he's back and looks like he's back amongst it. And Leeds is going to have a real time on his hands trying to get back into that defensive centre-back pairing.
And maybe he doesn't. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not. Tom Lees doesn't owe us anything. He's been one of the best free transfers in the history of the football club. But if
up there with other best free transfer of the football club, Julian Berner.
Yeah, exactly. I loved that moment towards the, because I talked about how little pressure there seemed to be after our goal. Leeds seemed to go to pieces, but it was a gorgeous moment when Berner sort of had a look around and was able to burn up kind of 10-15 seconds with a kind of a leisurely takedown on his chest, a bit of a look around, and then thumping the volleyed pass forward. It just spoke to just how comfortable he is and what a great presence he is to have around the team.
I was just looking at the Wednesday Twitter account. So they did a tweet about just over an hour ago. So probably been deep in furrowing our brows over this game. But the boss went hard courage, brilliant from the maul. And there's a picture of Julian Berner just celebrating from the fans, but he's got a Wednesday scarf on. It's a bit of that kind of, I think as Englishmen, we're a little bit cynical sometimes towards people being like incredibly, and it just feels like a very European thing, like really completely unironic, genuine, love for doing something. And it just in this picture of, if you can go and put in the show notes or link to it, it just kind of captures everything. It captures everything. I think that's Julian Berner, which is just an earnest love for what he does. And it's just beautiful to see. So again, I look like I'm going to start crying again.
Luke's bladder is a bit near his eyeballs today. It's a big day.
It's that time of the month in my apartment for me.
But he just to speak to that kind of enthusiasm. I mean, he's a guy who's had an accomplished career in Germany. He's come over. He's 28 years of age. He's not a young whippersnapper, but he's come over because he loves English football and he sort of wanted to give it a go, to hear him interviewed. And I'd like to think, from the way he's reacting to us and the way we're reacting to him, that his experience with English football must be everything he hoped for and more. It's great. It's great to be part of and great to watch. And before we well up again, we should move on to Captain Fox Morgan.
Captain Fox Morgan, who is also a picture of him celebrating with the fans at the end as well for that stoppage time goal. The one that we saw the cameras kind of flicked over to the fans behind. So Fox Morgan went over to give a little cuddle to one of our lovely Wednesday hoolies in the fans.
That's a great picture as well.
Sorry, I shouldn't call him a hoolie. That's just a very discriminative, very very crappy thing to say. He's a fan. He's a bit track-suited, but he's having a little bit of a cuddle with Fox Morgan. So that's good. And I'm going to go for a 7 for him. He didn't, get forward. We didn't look for him to be the one getting forward down the wing, but he was decent all round defensively. It's more kind of good stuff from him, and he's another man who I think he needs a contract.
His confidence playing the ball forward is really a marked difference between how he was before and how he is now, and it's really helping the team. The fact he's very confidently and quickly picking out either reach or either his winger or somebody in field with those passes really is helping us build play going forward. It's been really good to see his play come forward leaps and bounds, and maybe he's more like the sort of player he was at Charlton. It's taken a while, but he did attract a fee. He was fairly well thought of at Charlton. And I think we're seeing more and more why that was the case. And yeah, I do think he deserves a new contract along with Cameron Dawson. In terms of that midfield three, who do you want to pick up first?
Oh, that's a good question. Maybe we'll do who scored holding midfielder Kieran Lee.
Always been a DM.
Always been a DM. You gave him a 7. I thought he was busy and industrious. Yeah. He had those moments where he kind of popped up with the ball, which was just beautiful to see.
And that industry did play a part, although not sort of directly, but it did play a part in the first goal as well.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. I think I'd still like to, especially with our kind of striker crisis, I think we need to keep this midfield free, and I think you definitely want to put Bannon and Lee in there, probably with Luongo.
Just another, yeah.
And then even I wouldn't besmirch Luongo dropping for Hutchinson on some occasion, but I like this midfield three of Bannon and Lee. Our two centre mids who came in our team of the decade. It's good to see that we still got some juice to get out of Kieran Lee, even if we've not seen that kind of assists or goals. He's still coming with an impact that we can't quite put into words.
Yeah.
So it's good. I was happy for him.
Good stuff. Do you want to do Luongo next?
Let's do Luongo. 7.5, his absolute quality and his determination. He had a couple of situations similar to the free kick he won at Brighton, where he'll put his head anywhere, pretty much. Yeah. And just having a play like that with that kind of heart and soul is something else. And then on top of that, he's absolutely quality with the ball. Yeah. He can move the ball quickly. He's got a bit of pace to him. He's fit. He's agile. He's able. Just great engine. A little bit disappointed to see him go off, but whatever. And I think, as Richard Miller said in the previous podcast, he's an absolute Rolls Royce of a player.
I did say that, and I stand by it. What a treat! It might just be for Luongo. He's not played masses of football, pardon the pun, this season, and playing 2 games back to back might just have been. They might just have felt it was taking its toll on him, and there might be a case of sort of managing his way back into the first team as well, because certainly the more games he can play between now and the end of the season, the better we will be served as a team, and sort of forcing him to the end of 90 minutes when maybe it's better for his muscles, his fitness, etc., to take him off a little bit ahead of that, and maybe it's worth it in the long run. You've got to manage everyone, haven't you? You've got to manage the energy levels and tears and wear and tear in this exhaustive championship season. Barry Bannon completes the trio.
Weebaz, some great interplay and footwork from him, neat and tidy, some great balls. I actually was writing this down kind of prior to the kind of the goals, and basically saying that it's a shame we didn't get an assist from him, but we got a second assist.
Yes.
To kind of carry on with Luke's fervent, weird hockey analogies in this way. He got a second assist, and that was such a beautiful, lovely, sweet-weighted ball that he just sent down the line for Riccinio to do his magic with. And I think a 7.5 is good for him.
Good stuff.
I think there are games we'll see a lot more from Bannon. There'll be games where we're like, it's a shame we didn't see, we didn't get that, Bannon's performance didn't get the assist or the goal, from him. But it's still a very good performance from Bannon.
Yeah, good stuff. Murphy on the right wing.
Jacob Twinkle Toes Murphy. As I've noticed on his corners, he does like a real Fred Flintstone bowling kind of run up.
Nice.
We just don't get the sound effect, annoyingly, of him doing that. But he did that, and his corners were quite good, actually, while I'm talking about that. I've gone for a 7.5 for Murphy. Murphy had an interesting game, because in the beginning, he was looking, his pace and verve, he was looking dangerous. Yet he would often just kind of lose the ball afterwards.
Right.
And it was really weird to see, just being like, maybe it's a little bit like that commentator was saying about his performance at Brighton last week, where basically like, he's had a good game, but his deliveries have let him down.
Yeah, I think he's quite a direct player by and large, but it seems like he can be dissuaded. I do remember that with Ben Marshall. There was a few games where clearly teams had decided to, rattle into a tackle or two early doors with him, and he just would then sink into his shell. And it's a little bit like that with Murphy. If things go, if those first few kind of nibbles where he's having a run at his man and things, if they go well, he tends to then go on and have a really good game. But if he struggles, then it's kind of sets him up for a game full of kind of toiling away and not much happening for him. But yeah, well, great to see him grab that goal, and that hopefully will give him a lot of confidence. That was a tremendous finish.
It was really something fantastic, and I think I need to see it again from different angles.
Yes.
You kind of baffled me, Rich, when you said he beat the keeper at the near post. I didn't see it that way, but maybe I don't know. It was a real fantastic finish.
That's what it looked like to me, but I might be wrong, and we'll get some highlights at some stage, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. So then the opposite flank was Adam Reach's today.
Rich was really good as well. As you say, I think he's enjoying that kind of life on the left wing. Some great little plays and footwork, some good crossing, some good industry, and then a lovely sweet assist as well. So. Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying that, but I think that for right now, with form, that Reach and Murphy are our first two first choice wing options going into the next game or for the foreseeable future until something changes. But really good, 7.5. I think I've said that already. Yeah. He's
enjoying life on the left wing so much. He's started reading Mao's Little Red Book, and He's taken to wearing one of those little hats like Jeremy Corbyn. He's really loving it on the left. Sammy Winnall.
Oh, everyone's favourite champagne socialist, Adam Reach. Anyway, let's move on from the winged Bernie Sanders, Adam Reach.
We're just going to wander along to Sammy Winnall.
Sammy Winnall. Oh, dear. This is the kind of negative of the game. I'm going to give him a 6.
Okay.
I also wonder this might just be conjecture and complete guesses. I don't think this is a real radical prediction, but maybe it seems that. I think this might be his last game in a Wednesday shirt.
Really?
I think what's going to happen is he's maybe not going to play for the next game or two, and then he'll get snapped up or be gone soon. We're into the last 6 months of his contract.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, and this is someone who's cost us... Well, it's cost $500,000, so it's not the worst thing in the world. We're not going to see some Mesut Ozil keeping on the contracts in the books. But I think this is the last of him, and he tried hard. He really should have scored from that corner pinball.
The highlights are up on the Sky Sports website now, so I've had a chance to see that particular miss, which is it's astounding he didn't hit the target with it. Must have been.
Should have hit the target. It's one of those where you think, well, you need to at least hit the target first,
Yeah, to be honest, the other one that Murphy played through for him is a bit of a sitter as well.
You think the one that if he was 6 inches taller, he would have hit it?
I think if he remembered he had a left leg, it looks like. But yeah, they're not good watching those highlights for Sammy Winnall. I'm wondering. For me, it's whether he gets somebody's interested in him. Sorry.
Well, I think it will. I think someone will. I think someone will think, oh, he can still do a job. I think he'll either drop down a level or he'll go to Barnsley, which essentially is kind of dropping down a level.
Yeah.
to be critical. And
he holds some of the same records or some of the similar records to Rhodes, doesn't he? In that, before they joined us, both of them were holding these records. I don't know about after the years of being with Sheffield Wednesday and not scoring.
One up there with Billy Sharp and
most goals in the last
top-scoring Englishman in the last decade. Yes, I think I've seen that stat as well.
Keep adding caveats, and Sammy Winnall becomes Pele.
So I don't know. Because then it comes down to the question at the end of the season. I think he's probably gone at this point. He's 28. He's still got a few more years left. Started off at Wolves. That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
He's from Wolverhampton. I didn't know that.
Yeah. He's just never looked very good for Wednesday. That's the be all and end all, isn't it? It's just never. Even when he came in right at the start, full of, he's on a great run of form. He's kind of taken the championship by storm that first half season with Barnsley. And even then, he came in and missed loads of chances, looked pretty lacking in confidence on the ball. He certainly did. He just didn't look as good as the people that he was playing with in what was Carlos's second go at a promotion-winning team. Winall just never fit. It's the opposite of Kieran Lee.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Okay, so he was replaced. The first sub we made was Adthe Nuhiu came on. And
here's my man of the match. It's Adthe Nuhiu. He gets an 8. Just what is it about that, is he, I don't know, we sometimes get these like super sub appearances from him.
I know.
And he was just incredible. Like, what an amazing assist. And then to score as well, just really the cherry on the cake.
It was a tremendous cameo from, we talked about Stanley Tucci-esque performances stealing the show. Yeah. Wonderful stuff from Adthe Nuhiu.
The Kosovan faced assassin. To kind of very lamely follow an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer.
Kosovan Kaiser Söze.
Kosovan Kaiser Söze. I like that one better. I wonder if he's gonna go manage Cardiff in the future as well.
Maybe
kind of tie that up. Maybe so. It was just fantastic, and I think the rest of his play was really good as well. That was a substitution I think probably changed the game.
Yeah. As he frequently does. It's just not all the time. If it was all the time, it would be a no-brainer. But he does it. He does it enough, definitely. Joey Pelupessy came on 77th minute. Didn't see much from him.
Didn't see much. I gave him a 6.5. He probably did some stuff, but I can't really call what it was.
Yeah.
He gets a 6.5, which is damning. He got a better mark than Sam Winall, but there we go.
And then finally, Hutch came on last with 5 minutes to spare.
And he gets a 7 because he did a good clearance that led for the goal as well. And just kind of helped kind of keep things kind of strong at the back as well. So
good stuff. I'm
quite liking the right back berth for Sam Hutchinson. Yeah, and that's actually where he started his career as a right back.
Ah, interesting.
One of the things I learned from his illuminating commentary of the Bristol City game.
The occasional right-back adventures of Samuel Hutchinson, Esquire. Well, that's it. We won away at Leeds. Took them off the top of the table, got ourselves back in the playoffs. All in all, that's a pretty special Saturday. I
think so. It's hard to disagree with that. That's I probably scared my neighbours with shouting very loudly at the goals. So it was good stuff.
Yeah, it's good to scare the neighbours occasionally.
Oh yeah.
And so next up we've got Blackburn at home. That's one it would be nice to have back, wouldn't it? Because that Blackburn that lost away to Blackburn was a real sickener in the middle of a fairly decent run for us at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be nice to carry the wave with us this time and take some points off Blackburn. Well, yeah, there we go. That's us for another week, Luke.
Good stuff.
I hope you have a splendid remainder of the week and whatever you choose to do with your evening. Is there going to be a big poutine or something along those lines?
No, but actually yesterday, the 10th of January, was my 7 years in Calgary. So I had some ginger beef.
Ginger beef.
Which actually invented by an Englishman here in Calgary. So it's just deep fried pieces of beef in a sweet and spicy ginger sauce. It's very nice.
Sounds good. I've never heard of that before. Sounds interesting. Well, on that wonderful note, go and douse yourself in ginger beef, and we will meet again this time next week. Cheerio.
Have a good one, Rich.